reason we wanted to bring this up is because you've been building something pretty massive, pretty game-changing for Pip Decks. I mean, we can't really talk about it now. We had a discussion yesterday and you've been having some pretty intense feelings, some feelings that you haven't had since you sort of started Pip Decks. What is the feeling when you first started Pip Decks? What was that feeling that nobody really sort of talks about? You get this, people talk about that very crystal clean version of how you started a business. That you had this idea and then you just sort of follow the curiosity and lo and behold, you get a business. But it's just not actually like that in reality. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there have been people that have, but I think why those stories aren't popular or are that
Which
compelling.
stories?
Sorry, the stories that actually it's really hard and grueling. Well, yeah, all entrepreneur stories have that. Oh, it was a really hard grind in the beginning, and then it was happy ever after. It grew, or we sold it, or what have you. I think you just don't really hear the 99% other stories of quit my job to start a business. It didn't work out and I went back to work. Like no one's writing a book about that. No one's blogging or podcasting about that. But that is, I think, the reality for most people. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And then when it feels like everyone is doing it, not all of them survive because they're doing it for the wrong reasons or whatnot. But I think with what we're working on now, or what we're going to be launching soon with Pip Decks, it is like a brand new thing, virtually, an entire new offering that we've never done before, and it's been in the works for, I would say, like maybe even 3 years. It's been kind of in the works, but it's really ramped up over the last 12 months. I mean, what we were talking about was just how I'm terrified. Like I feel afraid of launching it because of all of the human emotions that accompany it, that are largely irrational. Because when I was saying like, what am I afraid of? I think you even asked me that, like, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, I'm afraid that people are going to think it's dumb. And then I immediately then remembered we have a beta program. People are actively using it right now and are loving it. So I'm like, why do I think that? But it's still a fear that just exists, and you can't just like think them away.
And why do you think you're feeling this for this kind of launch versus a new deck or the other launches that we've done? We've done a lot of new stuff over the last 12 months. What makes this different for you?
Well, a new deck is, we know that our customers love our products, and making a new product that they're familiar with. It's like, why does anyone buy another pair of Nike shoes? Because they liked the previous pair. I think with this, because it's so new and different, and I suppose the different is that some customers won't like it. They will think things, and I can't know what they're going to think, but it doesn't stop me thinking about all of the potential things I'm imagining them to think, and I think why that's annoying is it slows me down, and it stops me from doing things that I ought to be doing, which is trusting your gut and also listening to actual data, such as the feedback that we're getting from people in the beta program and, all that kind of thing.
Well, that's interesting. So you've got two very opposed things there of trusting your gut and following data. Like, would you...
I don't think they're opposed at all.
Separate thing. You don't?
No, I think it's the same. I think it's just two types of data. I think your gut is data that doesn't have... I think your gut doesn't have like a balance sheet or a spreadsheet to it. It can't be interrogated or reasoned with. It just is.
But I feel a lot of people wouldn't say, a lot of people, I think particularly in today's society, a lot of people avoid using their gut and try to use intellect and use, that seems to be what's encouraged. The tech world and stuff is all about information and data. And I agree. I want to say I agree with you that I think your gut, it is a data point, but a lot of people wouldn't look at it like that, right? They would say it's just winging it or guessing. And why do you still feel like it's important when building a product?
I mean, I guess you can look at, I think you can look at business in a little bit of a scientific lens, that everything that you do can be regarded as, an unproven hypothesis. I think this kind of business is going to be great for these kinds of people, and I think it'd be really good if we opened up a shop in this location. So you've got a massive assumption now that that's all going to be true, and I think where people maybe take trusting your gut incorrectly is you might have a gut feeling for that because you have, I guess, cultural knowledge, anecdotal knowledge, all the kinds of stuff that just isn't written down, that feeds into your brain and your subconscious, that makes you come up with these ideas, that makes you feel like, hey, wouldn't that be cool? That might just sound dumb to someone else, but obvious to you. It's then the actual sequence of making that happen. I think trusting your gut, yeah, of course it's going to work. People obviously then go and do the thing without doing some kind of risk reduction, I would call it. Because I don't think you can't really ever validate an idea. I don't think that really exists. I think validating an idea it's been around for a few years. And okay, this is an idea that is legitimate. And I think some people take validating an idea as someone's told me they would buy it, which doesn't mean anything.
Why?
Do we want to go down that route, or do you want to know why I'm feeling? I'll talk about that if you want. Why? We can't predict our future behavior. And the social kind of situation in which you're being asked by someone you probably already know and you don't want to hurt their feelings, and they're asking you, hey, would you use this really cool thing I've spent loads of time and effort making or thinking about? No, to say no, firstly, is, you're willingly damaging their ego or not allowing them to save face and all that sort of thing. So by and large,
and also personal reasons as well, right? If someone's like, would you go to the gym 3 times a week? I'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Do I go to the gym? No.
Yeah.
But
you can earnestly...
I want to perceive myself as that. And yeah, like you say, earnestly sort of, I believe that I could, but my actions say very differently to what I would say.
I think it's even worse than that. It's you could genuinely believe that tomorrow you are going to go to the gym. And then if someone asks you, are you going to go to the gym tomorrow? And you would say, yes, I am. And you'd go to bed, everything's ready, and you're going to do it. And then you literally don't. The next day, you just don't do it. So they are two different things. No matter how much you believe that you would, I think it's really important to stress that believing and doing are totally different things. And that's why I get really, frustrated when I see people validating a business idea by asking their friends if they would buy it. Is basically the worst possible way of going about starting a business. Worst possible thing you could do. The best thing to do is to get someone paying for it that you don't know as soon as you can, and in whatever capacity.
I didn't realize, similarly in Hollywood, that you have test screenings, which is where the studio will either pay or not tell a group of people that this is a special screening for a film, and then basically they have infrared cameras, and you can literally watch the people watching your film. And loads of directors hate that. It feels like you're sort of selling out, and it's my art and stuff like that. So then as these directors work through the ranks, they have to do less and less of those studio testings. And the compromise is they have a friends and family showing, and that's their version of a test screening. And so no wonder do you get these amazing directors making absolutely dud films at the top of their game, because the only people giving them feedback is friends and family and a studio which don't want to lose them. So of course they're living this kind of world,
The Irishman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to get into the Netflixification of my favorite directors. But going back to the feeling that you're feeling at the moment. So you're leading with this mixture of gut instinct and data.
Yeah, well, so yeah, the gut instinct is like what we're going to be launching really soon. I think we've started emailing people about it, but what we're launching really soon is definitely derived from. We're only pursuing it because of the gut feeling that it makes sense to us and it's the right thing to do, and we think it's going to be really useful for our customers, and we're going to have fun making it. Like that's the kind of barometer that we work towards. Um, and then in traditional fashion of like, okay, now test your biggest assumptions. Like, are people going to use this? So we started the beta program and we made people pay to access it. It's not a free thing. So we're not getting like false certainty that, people are coming in, using it for a bit maybe, and then saying, oh, this is great. And then like never coming back. Like if that happens, they haven't paid for it and they're not using it over and over again. We have people actively paying for it and they've been using it for, I think, maybe 6 months now, like regularly. And that still doesn't make me feel any better. I don't know why. That still doesn't make me feel any better because we're just amplifying the amount of people that will be able to have access to it. And I think these feelings, they felt familiar. I'm like, why do I feel so anxious? I'm not usually that anxious about stuff. And I just have this feeling of like, oh my God, well, this launch is coming and people are asking me how am I doing, and I'm not very good at like not saying the truth. So I say I'm scared. And like, what are you scared of? I'm like, well, this is a new thing I'm doing in the business, and I'm terrified of it. And then, divulge.
Is there a feeling of excitement in there? Is there like in that fear that like is there a kind of like, I don't know, riding the nuclear bomb, like yeehaw, like let's see what happens with this? Like, do you feel, or is it completely encompassed by the anxiety?
I mean, yeah, I think when I'm working on it, I'm excited, but when I'm not and I'm thinking about it, is when I get scared.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this, and it's a weird type of fear. It's not like a, run and hide or fight. It's not even fight or flight. It's like it is a form of anxiety, I suppose, that that I remember feeling when I first started the business. And then it was really, I was telling you yesterday about, what that really looks like. And it was, when I think hard about it, it's like, oh yeah, God, I was really scared the entire time. And that actually drove the behavior of doing the tiny little baby steps to de-risk every single step. So, when I first had the idea for which was workshop tactics, shall I go and get one? Can you see that? This one's empty.
For audio listeners, he's holding up a box of workshop tactics.
Which are basically, if you haven't used them before, there are a bunch of different workshop exercises I used to run when I was working as a designer, helping teams, solve problems and work together. And basically, hey, there's better ways of doing things than sitting in a meeting and letting the loudest voice just like tell everyone what's what. And like this as it is, this was like in my head, like as you kind of see it just felt like it needed to be excavated.
So wait, sorry, you've that as it stands was in your head. So you kind of was like, because I want to break that down a bit because it's it was quite a unique, like obviously now card decks, you can kind of see there's like a few School of Life do their own versions and stuff like that. But I swear, like back when it was starting, it felt very almost daring and quite risky. Like there is there was a risk to it because like books already exist. Do decks of cards really help? That kind of stuff. What still made you decide and dive into that? What was the inspiration?
It was being exposed to other card decks that I'd seen, on people's desks in the office, but they always seemed really banal, like just with very light amount of information, or they were designed to be played in a certain way. And if you don't know the rules or like how to actually work with them, they were just kind of useless. And I think anyone entrepreneurial listening to this has had that feeling of like, oh, I could do it better. I could do it my way. And like that, I think that is also a very legitimate kind of reason to start doing anything, is because you want to and you think you can do it. It's not just about being better, but doing it in the way that you want it to be. And I think that's the fun part about making a business and making stuff in a business, is that you get to, decide how it is. But
it's interesting you say about doing something better, because a lot of the advice out there is find something so insanely unique and such a specific niche that like no one could have possibly thought about it beforehand. It's almost, I'm being a bit glib.
Yeah,
there,
you know what? But that exactly, and that was, I think that is a massive part of the initial anxiety. Was I had this idea, and it was more a dumb idea. I didn't actually. I think this is a really important point to make. Never had any ambition for it to become a business. It was a side project that I thought would be cool to just make for the people I was working with, who honestly just kept bothering me for a workshop advice, because I was running workshops that I'd picked up throughout my career. If you haven't experienced one before, they're kind of insane how productive they can be when someone who knows what they're doing can ask the right questions. It's like group coaching almost with your colleagues in that way. I thought, right, if I put everything I know in one place and give it to them, they'll leave me alone. And the deck kind of evolved that way, because I made a prototype version of it, which I've got knocking about somewhere. Like the first ever version of it. People were, found it useful, but they still came to me asking, like, hey, which card should I use next? Any of that sort of thing. That's why the content of the cards then became more of like a choose your adventure. Like, right, you've done this, now you need to do that, or I don't know where to start. Follow this flow chart type thing. So
I think people would be interested to know where, you kind of, again, just sort of, and then I wrote the cards. Like, where did you get when did you write it? Like, do I remember, did you write it on the bus?
No, on the train.
On the train.
On the train. Well, yeah, I think the actual writing of it probably was the hardest part. But like, I don't find it that interesting to talk about the actual writing of it, because I guess because I have memories of it being really annoying and difficult, and there's 54 cards, and there was a very laborious process of shortlisting that and then writing it and rewriting each card. I think at the time I was reading I can't remember the name. I think it's a book called God, I have to remember the book. Several short something sentences about writing, by someone with a German sounding name. Anyway, probably cut that bit out, but we'll find the actual book. That book really inspired me to edit to ensure that the back of the card has every word is unnecessary until proven essential, is basically what that book preaches. And it really forced me to write the most concise version of the instructions that you could give to someone and they made sense. Like, if you write a recipe to cook a lasagna, if you word something in a way that can be interpreted so that it goes wrong, the recipe is useless. And so the same is true for these. So the whole process of writing it was as painful as writing anything. If you're a writer, you will probably understand.
So what, did you have 1,000 different potential workshops? Did the 54 come pretty quickly, or was it?
Yeah, no, they came very quickly, because it was the stuff that I was using and doing, and that was a part of my workflow and my toolbox, so to speak. It was more, you are constrained by the size of the deck, as in 54 cards. So it was more of a case of which ones do you keep and which ones do you not keep, which ones are kind of too similar, which ones just don't fit in at all, or feel like they're just too big of a workshop. Because the whole point of these is that they're all quite bite-sized workshops, and you can chain them together to make a bigger workshop. So any workshops I was doing that was a big thing, I was like, well, what are the small bits inside that I'm actually doing? And is that, but all that aside, the actual process of like it becoming a business was not sexy and not intentional and not I think it's interesting to talk about now because Act 3 is done. It's sold hundreds of thousands of copies and it's successful. So we get to have the nice retrospective, like, oh, how did that go? What's the origin story of this really successful product? It could have easily just like died a death at several stages, I think.
Is there any decision that you made early on in starting the business where you're like, I'm really glad I did that? That probably has at least something to do with why we're still here.
Oh, the design of it, absolutely. I mean, I think this is like the most underrated or maybe overlooked part of a business that if you don't have like everyone in Silicon Valley is talking about taste, but I'm going to talk about fucking taste because I think if you have good taste and you have a good eye for design or you kind of know what you like or what you want it to look like, I think that goes such a long way. And not to get too much into AI, but I think the problem with AI is everyone's making stuff that all looks the same now more than ever because they're all using the same training data to make a website. And it makes me...
Well, everyone's kind of offloading their taste to AI as well, and just being like, this is the way to do something. AI told me this is how a website should look, so I guess I'll just trust it.
And that's why Silicon Valley is like, oh, right, wait, your unique taste is actually valuable now. Everything looks the same.
Silicon Valley like discovers humanity.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Personality. Right. Yeah.
But I think when I was saying earlier about how like the idea was in my head and I just excavated it, I don't know why. I just knew that there had to be cartoon characters on it. I knew that I didn't want them to be too cartoony, if that means anything. And I knew that it still had to have like a seriousness about it. And I knew that sweet and sour mix between seriousness and playfulness was what I was going for because that's what I wanted to do. Like, I don't know, why does anyone make anything they make? I think that was the creative act, was like making the thing look like it does. And again, this is why I think it was popular, because you can... the first ad was literally just holding the deck and letting the light catch that UV spot treatment on the red. And, it says what it does on the box. I think that was also an important feature of it, was that it could explain itself to some degree.
Well, still, even the name as well, like the name itself.
But still leave you thinking, okay, so what is it? What's inside? And it makes you go and then investigate it. Then you can do fun stuff like putting those guys in.
For the audio listeners, there's an actual illustration inside the Workshop Tactics box. If you haven't seen it yet, get your box out. And
I mean, there's loads of Easter eggs on all the decks that I've not told anyone about that people often email me and saying, hey, is this supposed to be there? But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so I think at the time I was also reading loads of Seth Godin. And I think, did we talk about Purple Cow last time?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
I mean, it's probably going to come up in every bloody episode because it's...
But we talk about it quite a lot, about how, we spend a lot of time on the marketing of Pip Decks and different angles and how you sell them and what intrigues people about them and stuff like that. And there is just this unshakable feeling of just like, they look cool. So you're just like, I'm interested because they instantly just look interesting. Like they are an interesting looking product.
Well, I think in the first couple of years, we did do a survey which listed out a bunch of preset reasons about, what made you buy today. And like, I think like the outsized response was, oh, there's Coco. The outsized response was because they look cool. And I'm like, oh my God, is that really it? Like, is that effectively the Trojan horse for a good product? Is make someone buy it because it makes them look cool, because it looks cool. And then it actually does provide a useful function that is delightful and helpful. And then people want to talk and share it because it looks cool. And then they look cool for sharing it because it looks cool. Like it is, I think, sometimes as dumb and as simple as that.
And do you think people are happy to pay? Because we know there are decks out there that people sell for 15 quid, $15 or whatever. And obviously ours have more of a premium. Do you think the coolness, people will pay a premium for cool? Or do you think there needs to be an extra bit of sauce to get people there? I mean, I'd argue the whole fashion industry is based on that looks cool and I'll pay lots of money for it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a big topic, but I think the cool stuff generally isn't cheap, is my worldview, maybe. Like, getting to this point with a physical deck in my hands, I think and go back to the fear of like how to price it as well was another anxiety. Like, what are people going to pay for this? So one of the little things I did to try and like make myself feel better that the idea had legs and that I should do it, early on was I was giving some design talks at local meetups in Manchester around this time. I think it was like 2019 sort of time. And I would plug workshop tactics at the end because by this point I'd made a 3D mock-up of the deck. It didn't exist yet. I hadn't written any of the content. I just had a visual mock-up of it. And I had the name and the vision had been realized. I'd got my good friend, our good friend, Dave Hill, to do the illustrations. And so I was walking around with this thing that looks real, or not physically walking around with it, but virtually walking around with it. I'd already set up a landing page to sell the deck, and you couldn't buy it, but you could sign up to find out more when more information comes about. And I ran, I think, spent like 200 or 300 quid on LinkedIn ads to that page, and then people were signing up. So that was like a little smoke test, is what you might call that, to validate the idea, which I think, now my perception on what that is that you're just getting data that this is something that you ought to keep pursuing, but you need to gain more confidence. So you need to do the next thing now. Now that people are signing up and they're interested, you've traded that £200 of ad spend for, I don't know, 200 people on a mailing list who want to know more about what you're making. And then I leverage that into basically surveying them, like, who are you? What's your job title? Why are you interested in this? What problem do you think is going to solve for you? You're just doing a research endeavor, right? You're just trying to figure out, like, who are the people interested in this? And, is this going to serve them? And what problem is it really solving? And all that sort of thing.
So you're saying that you sort of kicked off with gut instinct confirmed with data?
Yeah, but I think the trap is there's never a confirmation. There's always like a +1 to your confidence that this isn't a shit idea, and there's a +1 confidence to it's not going to lose money, and then there's a +1 confidence that gets you to it might break even, and then be like a temporary thing, and then you just keep climbing this ladder slowly of, oh, okay, so now deciding how much stock to buy. You're now then just playing around with that same assumption testing and risk reduction type thing. I'm saying type thing a lot today. Type
so
shit.
how
shit.
how long was from conception of your sort of idea of I'm interested, I'm going to take my first stab at this, to okay, I think this is a viable business? How long is that time frame? Are you kind of in that state of oh, I don't know if this is going to work?
Honestly, the answer to that is the entire duration of the business, even up until now.
Yeah. Yeah. But okay. But to be more specific, because obviously it started as a side project and then it has become a viable business. What time frame is that? How long were you in that space for?
Well, the viability, again, is another kind of risk mitigating testing type activity to do. And I remember spending so much time in a spreadsheet, just plugging in numbers. And to go back to the meetups I was doing and plugging workshop tactics at the end, I was doing that to gauge the interest as well. Like, are people in my local, community interested in this stuff? Because it was marketed towards other designers at the time, and turns out more than just designers find it useful to run, productive and problem-solving workshops. But so people came up to me after every talk that I ran or did and asked me, "Hey, can I buy this now? Do you have any on you?" And I'm like, "No, it doesn't exist yet. Well, it's in the works, but if you're interested, I can get your email and tell you when it's ready." But I thought I'll be really clever, and I'll find out how much they think, how much they'd pay for it. So the dumbest fucking question in the world, by the way, and I've already told you why this is dumb. So I asked them, like, "All right, so how much would you pay for this?" And I just didn't hear what I wanted to hear, because when I was plugging in this spreadsheet and I was getting costs from factories, and I was looking at what all the costs are that are involved in actually making a physical product and importing it and shipping it, and literally a list 1,000 long of other stuff that you need to factor in, I was starting to get a sense of like what it had to sell for it to have any viability as a business at scale, because I was now tinkering with the idea that this could be something that makes money. Now I've seen people using it, and all of the prototypes that I'd made had been taken up, and I'd got this traction with the mailing list that I'd been sending traffic to, and I was getting this interest from talks. Like, all of this stuff was like snowballing kind of slowly, but then you blink and it's kind of gotten a bit bigger. And these buggers after these talks would tell me like, "Oh, maybe like £12 or £15 at most." Someone said £20. I'm like, "Okay, good, right?" And then I go back to my spreadsheet and see that if the retail price is £20, you're losing money on every deck. And I'm like, okay. So the business doesn't work. If people are telling me that it's going to cost, they'd pay this, but that doesn't make money, like, this business just doesn't exist. And I think if I had like gotten to that point and not had another perspective, again from our Lord and Savior Seth Godin, I probably would have not had the confidence to keep going. And what Seth Godin taught me was that the price is the product, the price is the story. A good price creates tension. A high price signals high value. A low price signals low value.
And also people, it creates that feeling that we actually desire it. Like, we either want to feel, I think this is a Roy Sutherland idea, is when you're buying a product, you either want the feeling of, "Oh, I've got such a good bargain. That's like such an exciting, yes, I feel like I've somehow tricked the company. I've got such a good bargain," which is where Black Friday works. Or you want that feeling of like, "Oh, it's just a bit too expensive.
It's a treat.
It's either a treat or an investment of myself." That middle zone where a lot of products live, just, you don't feel anything and you get no excitement buying it.
Yeah. I think he uses KFC as that example. You're either spending 20 quid on a huge bucket, or you're getting like a Zinger wrap or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that gave me, that Seth Godin advice was really helpful, because it helped me then honestly, just the exercise of having your product on a web page and changing the price in the on the web page to one that kind of almost makes you laugh out loud, that how could I get away with selling it for that? That's ridiculous. But you just let it sit there and you look at it, and then you start to kind of like get comfortable with, I think we first sold Workshop Tactics for, I think the first price was like £60. And at the time I was like, that's insane. Like, no one is going to spend £60 on a deck of cards. But when I saw that price next to the deck, I was like, does fucking make the deck look like way cooler somehow, or like I could feel it working on me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that kind of, it literally feels like some sort of magic or alchemy is happening when you put a price on something that doesn't seem logical or rational.
It's almost like the price matched the design and the look and the like premium feel. Like it doesn't look like a
It's congruent. Yeah,
cheap problem. Yeah.
I think so. And so the real test, again, this was like, I guess trying to answer your question of like how long did this take? I think it was over the course of like 12 months of just slowly, and I was still working as well. Like I didn't quit my job or career to go and like live out a dream of becoming a business owner. I had a safety net as well, which is another unglamorous thing to talk about. I had a wife who has a job, and I had a job, and this was a side project, so there was no material risk.
So you're kicking it off at £60, and people start buying it.
No. It's like what I would have probably done differently is lead with the pre-sale test like as soon as it's easy to say to give this advice in hindsight, but everything worked out fine the way that I did go about it. So there's definitely merit in not doing it right away. But I think the sooner you can figure out that someone is willing to pay you for your idea or your thing that you want to make, and you can find the cheapest way to make it as real as possible so that they have enough trust in you that you're going to live out your promise. It's kind of like the whole business model of Kickstarter. Like that's why Kickstarter exists, but that's become a glorified marketing platform now. But I digress. So the main thing was like, will people buy your product? And I hadn't tested that yet. I had tested, will people sign up to find out more about my product? Will people come and ask me if they could buy it? I didn't know what price they would buy it at. Them telling me they'd buy it for £20 is different to them actually buying it for £20. There's a weird thing that anyone that semi-acquainted with, or they meet me and they're like, "Oh, you do Pip Decks? I've seen those. I've heard about those." They'll tell me they're going to buy a copy. I don't know why. There's almost like a social obligation to say, "I see that you're doing this cool thing. I don't want you to think I think it's shit, so I'm going to tell you that I'm going to buy it to signal that to you or something." They never fucking buy it. It's so weird. Like I almost could bet my house that someone telling me they're going to buy Pip Decks then doesn't. And
I don't have any Pip Decks.
What? Well, you've never bought Pip Decks, have you?
No, I haven't. I was joking. I've got loads.
But yeah, keep hold of those because there's not many left. So where was I? Yeah, so yeah, validating will someone buy it. So anyway, cut a long story short, that mailing list that I built up from the meetups, from the LinkedIn ads, from word of mouth. Basically, I was like, all right, this is happening. Like, there's for sure interest enough to do this. I have to buy an amount of stock from the factory that are going to be helping me make this. I know what like unit cost I can get, and I know what the minimum order has to be, which means I have to spend, I can't remember exactly how much it was. It was in the thousands of pounds as like the first like print run would cost. I didn't have thousands of pounds lying around to just fund that and like hope for the best. So I think at the time, I was really inspired by what Harry's Razors were doing. They had like a pre-sale campaign, and someone else, I can't remember who it was. But again, I did not invent this idea of de-risking by doing a pre-sale, but I basically did my own Kickstarter to my own mailing list. And I wrote an email. I remember it very vividly. I wrote an email which was now finally making Workshop Tactics available to pre-order. And I remember just looking at the price that I'd put on the product page, pressing send to a mailing list of a few hundred people now at this point. And again, that feeling of just like, this is fucked. No one's going to fucking buy it. All of this time and effort is going to be wasted. All those people that said they would buy it were probably lying. All the people that were actually using it in their day to day and telling me how good it was, they were just like lying to me to not make me feel bad. All of these like irrational thoughts of, and probably rational thoughts as well of, just doubt, self-doubt and general doubt about the whole thing, and the feeling of like, no one's going to buy a dumb little fucking card deck for £60. What, you know, and then also at the time I was still actually thinking like, what's the real business I'm going to eventually start? Because my legacy isn't going to be fucking card decks. You know, that's you know, so my ego was also a bit decoupled from it in that way. But press send on the email, and then obviously emails don't like reach everyone straight away, but there was a good 10 minutes of just like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I saw people were then like live on the website and then still nothing. And I'm just like, oh, this is people. And I saw the numbers dropping down, like, okay, people are coming and now they're leaving. Right. Fuck me. This is what a waste of time. What is so stupid that you thought this was going to be, that people were going to buy this thing. But I thought at least, well, then I haven't lost any money really on this, you know, so that was the whole point of doing it this way. And then I got the infamous Shopify ching on my phone, and I saw a notification saying Workshop Tactics, £60, one item is sold. And like, I can't, it's like, there's no drug that I've tried that is better than that feeling of like that first sale coming in from someone you don't know, even you've never met or spoken to, who has read your email and looked at your product, and it's a pre-order. They're not even getting it shipped. I didn't even say when it would come out. Like, I don't know, in the end of the year or something, I said, or the summer, I think it was that it actually started shipping. They had paid me money, and it was like the biggest validation feeling I could ever hope for. And then like another sale came in, and I'm like, oh fuck, okay, that's two. Okay, this is good, but it's still really not enough for. And before I could really think much more, it was like just a flow. They just kept coming in. I was going to say it's a flow. It wasn't a flurry, but in hindsight, it felt like a flurry of just like sale. You know, a couple of minutes goes by, another 2 sales coming in. And I think that evening, I think I pre-sold like 4 times the actual cost of the original print run. So it was like profitable out the gate after I'd ordered the print run, and then I would have like tons to spare, like hundreds of decks that because I had done the unit cost analysis and I'd done the crazy stupid like pricing research, and then the non-research of like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go with the, you know, the alchemy approach and the you know.
And so what? That's the kickoff. That's the sort of like real.
That was when I was like, yeah,
like this is legit. And so then what is the, because was it that night that you're like, I'm going to quit my job and this is a legit business, or was there still more sort of searching going on?
I mean, I think even 2 years into Workshop Tactics, and then later, I think like 6 to 8 months later, we did Storyteller Tactics, which we did do as a Kickstarter, because I was like, well, how does this process help the process I'd already, you know, just done? But that's a whole other podcast episode. I mean, I think I think it was Gerald Weinberg said that when you solve your biggest problem, your second biggest problem just shifts up into its place. So the fear of like, no one's going to buy this, this is stupid, that kind of like goes away. You know, people will buy it because they have, and you know, they're buying it in a viable model. By the way, this is viable in the sense that no marketing spend had been accounted for. I didn't ever think about running ads or anything at this point. I thought it's just going to be a word of mouth type business, and I'll do an organic thing. I don't know. The second biggest problem that came out was, how much stock do I order? Like, do I order 1,000 or 2,000? And I honestly spent hours trying to. Oh, Coco.
I'm not cutting that out.
No, don't even describe it to the listeners. You have to watch to see what's going on.
I'm going to splice this out for Instagram. Going back to business advice.
This is not business advice, by the way. You can't use that legally against me. This is a story of my experience, which is, again, as Derek Sivers would say, this is my lottery ticket number, not anyone else's. And there was a time and place. There's a lot of like compounding luck and all that, but I have since learned to not chalk up everything to luck because it's not that helpful, and it's not good behavior to model for your kids as well, that things only happen to you if you're lucky.
It's all just chaos.
Yeah. But yeah, so the second biggest problem that became the first biggest problem was, how much stock do I buy? I effectively had to gaslight myself into thinking that I could sell 2,000 copies of this, not just 1,000. And how I did that was, well, I think we pre-sold like 200 or so, like 250 approximately. And so I had to try and mental gymnastics myself into like, well, if I can sell 200, surely I can sell 400. And if I could sell 400, surely I could sell 800. Like, it's just more over more time. And if I can sell 800, that's basically 1,000. And if I can sell 1,000, well, what's that? Just times 2. Honestly, that is
some good math there.
That is genuinely like how I was trying to like psych myself up to spend more money than I was thinking of spending on more stock than I thought I'd need. And then it was like, well, so what happens now? Is this going to become a thing? And if that's the case, I'm not going to be spending. I can't go to the post office every day. I just can't. Not right now. I have a job. I can't be, spending my mornings faffing or my evenings. I was thinking ahead, so ahead of like, right, I've got 100 orders I need to box up and then take to the post office. So honestly, the next thing I did, I started arranging how to set up a warehouse, third-party logistics partner, so that when I ordered them from the factory, they go straight to the warehouse, and then they would start shipping them. So I would never get involved. So I didn't do the typical shipping it from your bedroom type thing.
Interesting.
That only happened for like a small window of time when I was moving from one warehouse to another. So I have this Instagram story.
Yeah, I've seen the photos.
Yeah, you've seen that, because I was doing it for a time, and the novelty of it was fun. But oh my God, it's like, this is so, if you're doing e-com, just don't do it. Like, there is, I say that, but when I was doing it, I got to put like post-it notes and stuff in there. I got to do fun things. So there is a benefit to doing it.
Yeah, sorry, explain that. So when you were so small, you were able to kind of throw in treats and things.
Yeah, I'm lying a little bit. When I did the beta launch, I'm lying a little bit. I'm misremembering. So the beta launch, that initial pre-sale, they actually bought a prototype. I'm really wrong about that. They bought the prototype with the promise they would get the final thing at the end. So they were buying the prototype. So I did ship these things, and I did have a lot of boxes, and I put a really, really nice like metallic cased Sharpie in there with like post-its. I got like wrapping paper, like with a wallpaper print of like all of the characters, Pip and Frodge and Blob. And I think I got custom post-its made and just all that. So I was like, how can I make this unboxing delightful so people would share it on social media and you like build up more like, buzz about it. So I was shipping like that initial batch, but my first fear of, right, if this is going to become a real thing, where am I going to store 2,000 boxes of card decks? And if I really want this to work as a business that's going to like not like take my time, because I think I'd already been red pilled by the Naval Ravikant, or your trade your time for building assets, not for money. And I was like, well, I'm not going to just become a warehouse operator in my own home. So I went straight to just getting the warehouse set up. And I think you asked me at the beginning of the podcast, like, what's one thing that you were glad that you did? And it was that. Honestly, like, because it allowed me to focus on the actual valuable stuff, which was marketing the thing. And I knew that the more I marketed it, the more there wasn't a bottleneck of how many I could like pack up and take my time away from the other stuff. So yeah, it was a really handy decision, especially when things did really start to pick up just through sheer word of mouth, that I was now looking at the the monthly income from this dumb little side project. And it was like now paying the mortgage and the bills. And I'm like, holy shit, like I could just not renew my my design contract with this company I was with at the time. I could just start doing this full time. I mean, that's honestly a whole nother episode to talk about from that point onwards, because I actually did go back to work, did fumble around a bit. I was still clambering, thinking, actually, this isn't a real business. I'm dumb for thinking that it is. I'm just going to go back to, doing another design contract.
So, hey, so you did almost like fall into the doubt then? Like the doubt took over?
I don't know if it's become clear, but I was doubtful, and I still am. Like, the doubt is there permanently. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned over the last, 7 or 8 years, is that you have to just constantly remind yourself that being full of doubt is okay, no matter how, uncomfortable it feels. And that doubt is a useful thing because it makes you do things that helps you reduce doubt, right? So basically the workshop tactics took off in the sense that the initial launch happened, and there was just sales happening organically, 2 or 3 sales a day, and all through word of mouth. So I was spending no money on marketing at this point. And it wasn't really until, I was literally boosting a post on Instagram. I wasn't even using Facebook Ad Manager. But when I put that in front of people, they came to the website and bought it. And it was like back then, it was like a £1 in, £10 out kind of, equation. And then you're like, well, okay, what happens if I go from £50 a day to £100 a day? And it's like, yep, we're just, instead of, can't even remember what kind of revenue it was back then, but like instead of $3,000 a day, it became $6,000 a day profitable. And you're just like, oh, fuck. Okay. What happens if we go from £100 a day to £1,000 a day? And you're like, yep, that's all good. Diminishing returns a little bit, but you're now doing 10, 15 grand in revenue, and profitable. And now your next biggest problem is you're going to run out of stock in 28 days and the factory takes, I don't know, 12 weeks. And you're like, oh, fuck.
Did you feel like the business was sort of taking on a life of its own and you were ending, or did you still, because it feels like the start of your journey is sort of you sort of pushing this boulder, being like, I believe in this thing, I trust this thing. And then it sort of almost feels like it then starts to roll away, it starts to become its own like thing. Did it feel like that at the time?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
yeah.
right, I gotta.
I think that's something that people ask or remind people who are starting out with a business, is that if it feel like the boulder analogy, if it feels like trying to get people to buy your thing or to be interested in your thing, or for it to like take off or get traction, if that feels like pushing a boulder uphill, then something is inherently wrong with what you're doing. And the annoying thing is you don't get to know what that is really ever. And on the flip side of that, like I think in the beginning it felt less like pushing a boulder, and it was more like, those little like ducks on a string, like the wooden duck toys on a string that kids have. It felt like that. Like I was like wheeling this little thing, like, hey, do you like my duck? Would you buy it? And then people are like, oh, that's a cute duck. Yeah, I'd buy that duck. And then you actually end up selling the duck, and people are like, this is really cool. And then I don't know why the fucking wooden ducks become a thing, but I'm trying to not equate the beginning. The beginning didn't feel hard because I was doing something I wanted to make, and I wasn't doing it to make money. The money equation was doing it so that it would make money, so that it could happen, and that if I was doing it to lose money or break even, that it really wasn't worth it. And I guess that's the basic equation of a business. Like, I think what maybe happens is people think, how can I make money? And then what can I fit into that money making equation that I could feasibly do? And then they waste loads of money trying to make something happen. When I think the more like immaculate of the conception of the idea, the more likely it is to, and that's that effortless kind of rolling down the hill.
Like the plane had taken off. It seems like you had done all the runway stuff and now it's up in the air, and now you were just, it seems like you were sort of almost like chasing after the business. Does that feel right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is, I mean, looking back, I talked about how there was quite a lot of intentionality early on with making it stand out on people's desk with the purple cow thing. If you make something remarkable, as in it's worth remarking upon, people are going to talk about it, and word of mouth is the most powerful marketing channel there is. And I really wanted to try and build something that did have its own steam. And with all of that in mind, when you actually see that working, it's still a bit like, how is this happening? Even though you've consciously tried to do these things, actually then seeing that happen, you're still doubtful that that was anything to do with you and your decisions, and more to do with other factors like, oh, I don't know. Again, so irrational, but I would literally make up stories that people are buying this only because, the initial people have mentioned it, and then those people that buy it will think it's shit and then not tell anyone else, and it's going to die. There won't be that like virality or like long-term virality to it. And I remember this feeling that has kind of gone away. It does come back sometimes, but this feeling really early on, whenever you'd hear that cha-ching sound go off on your Shopify app on your phone, which I eventually turned off, 2 years later, is that the feeling I'd have right after that was, and that was the last sale you ever made, and this has all been a fucking big joke. All of that stuff. Oh my God, it's awful. Come buy my products, by the way. It makes me sound like I'm very confident in what I'm making, but
I think it's I think a lot of people will relate to that. And I think, I can tell you from experience is like, yeah, that self-doubt when you're starting a business is very, very real. And I think when you're when you're listening to, not that I do, but like Diary of a CEO or any of these like Hormozy or whatever, and it just seems like they were birthed,
ordained,
became businessmen, and they were like, right, and I've got it in me. And I think self-doubt is very, very relatable. And I think more people need to talk about it, because I think it's a feeling that pretty much everyone that would want to start a business feels, right?
Yeah, I think the actual tangible feelings I remember, because a lot of them, it's just like this fleeting feeling. It's very hard to retrospectively dig up how you felt. And there's probably someone listening to this being like, well, I started a business and I felt fine. It's like, yeah, I wish I could feel that way or have that confidence. But at the same time, I feel like that, like, having no fear or no doubts is, maybe this might be naive to say, but is kind of dangerous, because if you think, oh yeah, we'll just make this, and then look, the market size is this big, it's trivial to get customers, we'll make it, we'll sell it to them, and Bob's your uncle will be millionaires by noon. Like, fuck me. Like, some people's confidence at that level sometimes it works out and they go and do it and they kind of like just brute force their way into success because they have this like, blinkered, I can do anything and nothing can stand in my way kind of attitude. But for the rest of us, I think what is surprising about starting a business is that I especially felt, and I don't know if this is more of a British thing than an American thing, but all of the stuff around it was actually harder than all of the stuff we've just spoken about. Namely, that I think this is more of a British thing. I think Australians maybe suffer from this as well. This like crabs in the bucket kind of mentality. There is something in the air in British culture where by default, I just felt like everyone was thinking, who the hell is he to be starting a business? What an idiot. Why does he think a card deck is, you know, going to be any good? And, who does he think he is? Was just this like, feeling going around in my head. And then that was semi-validated by the fact that people I used to work with, you'd hear things through people being, what people have said, or people would even like unfollow me that I used to, literal like mentors and ex-colleagues and bosses unfollow. I wasn't even posting anything like, in any way that would make them want to do that. But I just noticed I was being unfollowed by people that I literally used to work with or for.
It's like any sort of success, isn't it? It's jealousy. Like there's an element of
bizarre.
jealousy,
yeah,
which is very, very strange.
It's so bizarre.
But we've kind of reached towards the end of the episode. The bit you mentioned just there about, people just having that blind confidence and then, other people having the doubt. It makes you think there's a quote, I don't know who said it, where it's like there's a really thin line between courage and insanity and to be brave. And to be insane is to run into battle and be like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to start swinging stuff around. To be courageous is to be scared, but to do it anyway. And I think I love that view on things. Like, you're basically doing the same thing, but the fear is what makes you brave.
Yeah, and orchestrating a way in which you can't die as a result. Like,
yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, don't quit your job on a whim because you've got an idea for a business and you've got no backup plan, you've got no financial safety net or any savings. Don't do that, or like put tons. We still do this at Pip Decks, spend loads of time on something without testing if it's worth doing, and then we spend a lot of time on it and it doesn't do as well as we hoped. Like, I think it is really boring. It sounds really like, I don't know, clinical, but like risk reduction and assumption testing, it's part of like that came naturally to me because it was part of like the user experience design playbook. Like when you're making designs for people to use, you can't assume that how you design it is going to be correct and that people will understand how to use something. So you have to like make a prototype and see like where do people like misinterpret how to open it, or how to turn it on, or like how to use it to do something. It was just taking that exact same logic. This is all in the book, The Lean Startup, as well. Like that's a bit of a very early playbook for this way of working. But yeah, I think that the final thing that I was just alluding to there about the like all the stuff around it, like the people around me who I felt like, it made me not want to talk about it publicly or market it. I was literally holding myself back from giving the product the best possible chance because I thought all the people that know me are going to see it and think all these things about me, and it literally stopped me from marketing it better than I probably could have done early on. And I think that's something that Americans don't have, and it's an advantage they don't realize they have. Is I don't think they care. In fact,
there's a pride to it. Like, look at me.
Yeah,
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm making it. I'm doing my thing.
And everyone's generally quite happy for them as well. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you go get it, buddy. And I really love that. And it's probably why maybe I resonate with American culture in that way, is that positive mental attitude that they seem to have. And yeah, it's just that self-doubt. So I think the long and short of it is that that self-doubt is way worse than anyone ever lets on, and it's more pervasive than you can ever probably imagine. It doesn't go away. You just kind of learn to...
But you can harness it.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what it seems what you did. Like, you took it, you accepted it, and you harnessed it. And I think that's the sort of maybe the secret sauce to the early success of Pip Decks, for sure, and the continued success, and for this amazing new offering that we will be talking about very, very soon.
Yeah, as soon as it's out, I can feel a little less doubtful. So that'll be good. But yeah, thanks for the questions, Jacob. That was really nice.
Yeah, lovely chatting to you. And see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.